Okay, what we're going to do today is that we're going to learn about derivative of trig functions. And then we look at natural logs. So these will be the 4 things that I'm going to ask you to have it memorized. There's no other way around. You have to have it memorized. Okay, so for trig function, there is no rule for you to, there's not one rule for you to follow. And some of you, because of the pandemic, you may or may not see the trig functions, which is fine. Trig function, if you think about your sophomore year when you do that right triangle, and we talk about sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, those fun stuff, right? So what we're going to do for this one is I'm going to show you the derivative of trig function, but we're only going to focus on 2 functions, okay? One is sine and the other one is cosine. And the rule for you when you take the derivative of these 2 functions is the derivative of sine is cosine. It's going to be always like that. It's not going to change. That is the rule. The derivative of cosine is going to be sine, but not just sine. It's going to be negative sine. So I will have you to jot it down somewhere, have it memorized somehow, because you should know this. Have it on a piece of paper. So when you do practice, it's there for you. And if you do enough practice, you will remember this. Okay? So when you find the derivative of these functions, it's the same thing. It's nothing different. So y prime, okay, when you took the derivative, it's going to be y prime or f prime of something. The coefficient, I'm not going to do anything. The 2 will stay because this is the product. That's just a coefficient. This is the same thing as 2x. So notice that 2 will not be disappear, right? It's the same thing as right here. Unless the 2 is by itself, then it will disappear because it turned into 0. So that's not the same, okay? Right, the derivative of sine, we know the derivative of sine is cosine. So my derivative is going to be 2 times, instead of sine, I multiply by cosine. Question for me, how you feel about this? We'll look at the most basic trig function. And we're going to just focus on sine and cosine. Because of the time that we have, we're not going to look at tangent, we're not going to look at cotangent, cosecant, secant, and all of those stuff. We just look at sine and cosine. Question for me so far? Right. Cool. All right. Then we'll look at the next example. Okay. So in here, I can rewrite this as 1/2 sine. That's easier for me to see and figure out how I would take the derivative. Can someone guess? What will be my derivative of this one? The first one I have is 2 sine, and it's turned into 2 cosine. Now I have a 1/2 sine. What would be the derivative of this? Can you guess what that is? Based on the rule that I gave you. Yes, Jessica, that is correct. It is 1/2. It is 1/2. The sine would turn into cosine. Yes, that is correct. Okay, how do we feel about this? It's just not too bad, right? It's just something new. But if you have the rule in mind, you just have to follow what's given to you. Okay, I'll give you a few seconds to copy this down. If you use Cosx or you do it on a piece of paper, whatever works for you, go ahead and jot this down. Okay. All right, so we're gonna mix, because that's the only thing you need to know about sine cosine, is that when you took the derivative of sine, it gives you cosine. When you take the derivative of cosine, it will give you negative sine. And that will be the rule all the time. So we're gonna mix with what we learned previously, okay? So look over here, y prime. You can split this. You think of this as two different functions. The first one, if you look at the first one, is the x. What is the derivative of just x values? We just have to split it up into two parts, right? Yes, thank you. It's going to be 1. Now, you would just have to go to the next one, cosine. What is the derivative of cosine? The rule is given to you. Negative sine. So this is going to be negative sine. So it's look weird to have a plus minus. So I'm just going to rewrite this as minus 1 minus sine. So it's going to work out the same way that the polynomials that we've been practicing, okay? We just have to split into different parts and do it one by one. Just ask yourself, what is the derivative of this one? What is the derivative of second one? If you're not sure of these rules, you got to see me for office hours, okay? Get help, do practice. Let me know how I can help. Question for this example. Okay. All right, let's do the next one. I'm going to do y prime, so I'm going to start with the first part, negative 3 sine equal to. I know the negative 3 will stay. I'm not going to do anything with a 3, right? But I'm going to do something with a sine. What is the sine? So instead of sine, what is this going to turn into now? It's going to be negative 3 what? Thank you, Jessica. Cosine. Hold on, I'm writing too big. Okay. So this one is the one that we looked at, y prime, negative 3 cosine, okay? Now, I'm just going to do the second one, the second part, which is negative 3x squared. Derivative of this one, we know that we take the power, multiply with the coefficient, so that's going to turn into, whoops, that would turn into negative 6x. If you're not sure, please ask questions. Questions for me? Just it's the same. It's the same rule for the other one, but when you run into trig function, you just have to remind yourself the derivative of cosine is negative sine. The derivative of sine is cosine. It's the opposite of each other. However, for the cosine, it's going to be negative sine. So that's the difference. More example, or you want to give it a try? Give it a try. Okay, one person said, give it a try. What about the rest of you? I haven't heard anything from you. Give it a try. Okay. All right, then I will give you these. All right, I saw that. So the good thing about this is when I look on your work, if you didn't pair that, it's really helpful for me to see that, oh, okay, I saw this mistake. It's like you in person, I see your work. It's really useful for me. So this is what I know. This is the second part. I'm very happy. I'm glad that most of you got the second part correctly. You know the negative, when you took the derivative of negative cosine, that turned into positive sine. So that's good, okay? However, the first part, some of you was like, yikes, I don't know what to do. I saw a fraction, I don't know what to do. Well, let's look over here. I'm going to bring down the exponents. The coefficient is still there, right? 5 minus 1. Minus, well, the derivative of cosine is negative sine. If you have to show your work step by step, this is how it looks like. I'm missing the prim. Okay, y prim. So this is going to be 5 times 1 over 4 is going to be 5 over 4. 5 minus 1 give me 4. Negative, negative turn into positive. So this is the derivative of this function. Whoops. Question. Question for me on each part. Okay. All right.